What up, peeps? It's your girl, Dosh, coming back to Fernal Takes. Well, you guys, it's review time, and today I'm reviewing the movie titled Luce. This is starring Octavia Spencer, Naomi Watts, Tim Roth, and Kelvin Harrison Jr. And let me just first and foremost just say I enjoyed this movie immensely. This was one of those ones when I saw the trailer, it had me literally intrigued from beginning to end. And in some way, it did not disappoint at all. Secondly, Calvin Harrison Jr., he is definitely on my radar now. I saw him in a recent movie that came out, I want to say 2017, which was, I stated before, it was called It Comes at Night. And he did a great job in that movie overall, but his part definitely stood out in that movie as well, just like this one. So you know what? I definitely looking forward to giving you guys this review. Before I jump in, let me just note I'm going to avoid spoiling this for you all. I would prefer you all to see this for yourself and come back and tell me your thoughts. Secondly, I will say that somebody tried to come into my trailer for this one, my reaction to this, and basically try to spoil it for me. And whatever, I had to check that because I'm not here for that, and I would not do that to you all. You all would definitely see if I noted if it's going to be spoiler, but I prefer not to do that. Certain movies that I really, really enjoy, I would rather you enjoy all those particular scenes for yourself. So, but with that said, let's go ahead and jump into this one. Now, this is directed by Julius Onah. He's a Nigerian American filmmaker. He actually did the movie The Cloverfield Paradox. So I was happy to see his next, order of work. This is of course based off of the off-Broadway play by J.C. Lee. I almost wish I had seen the play. I would have loved to have been able to do somewhat of a comparison, but I'm here for the film adaptation. And I will say this, with this particular one, the overall premise I get from this is him being loose, all centered around him. I see it like, can a young man be allowed to be his own person, unless individuals want to kind of use him or her as a symbol of their overall expectations. And that's kind of how I see this movie overall based. Now, with that said, if you all recall the trailer, and I'm going to use most of the trailer as some ways of a context as I'm talking about this, because I want to try to just pinpoint certain things from the trailer, because at least I won't feel like I'm giving anything away. You see at the beginning where, of course, you see a scene of him, of course, giving off a speech, whichever. He does a speech, close at the beginning of the actual movie, talking about himself, whichever. And you kind of from there, get to see the scene of his parents, Naomi Watts playing the character Amy, Tim Roth playing the character Peter, Edgar, the full name of the parents. And you kind of learn over time, about him. Of course, he was adopted by them when he was 7. So, of course, 10 years later, he's now a senior. Of course, he's considered a model student. He's, of course, captain of the football team, part of the track team. He's on the debate team. And, of course, valedictorian. So he's just, overall, considered the pillar, student at, at the school, whichever. So everything looks good on the surface. But, to one of the teachers, which is played by Octavia Spencer, her name is Harriet Wilson, not everything is what it appears to be. And that's when you see the scene of Amy coming to visit the teachers, a parent-teacher meeting, and she lets it be known, just kind of inquiring about her son, asking, it must have been, a lot to bring him into your home, teach him knowing he's come from Eritrea, this, African country, whichever. It's like, you can't, go through a lot of certain things with the child, therapy and all that, not have to deal with that, whichever, to get to them where they are. And she says, that's why my concern of bringing you here, because she's thinking, she's coming here just to hear good things about her. She's met her at, this little thing that happened at the school. She was introduced, by Luce, to his parents, and just not realizing there's more to her meeting with the teacher. And that's when we find out about an essay that she asks her students to write and pick a particular person to write about. And he picks Franz Fanon, and with that, when she's explained to her, what's the situation, okay, about this paper, she says, she tells her when she shows her the paper is basically the ideals of an individual who feels necessary violence is some sort of healthy cleansing of sorts. And she's like, are you teaching your students? And she's just like, no. So kind of from there, it becomes an issue where she gives her this paper, and she also gives her another item. I won't get into that. And let's just say that she doesn't want to invade her son's privacy, whichever. She does take the paper and the other, item, and she takes it home to her husband, and they're having a discussion about how to deal with the situation with their son. And of course, he sees it as another way, being that, they don't know our son better than we do, whichever, being that, of course, you raised him through a lot of stuff, whatever, So but then certain things happen where it comes across Luce, where he ends up finding said paper, whichever, and this is when it kind of starts a whole situation. From there, it's almost like Luce starts to become very methodical about how to deal with the situation with his teacher, played by Octavia. And you kind of see certain things that get set up. You see the confrontation, not confrontation, but a kind of conversation where he comes to see the teacher, and it's just them in the room, and her, speaking to him, whichever. And he said, you can't believe I wrote that stuff in the paper, whichever. And she's like, I don't know what to believe. I will say this: there's a scene between them where he's getting ready to leave, but then he comes back. And he asks her, Miss Wilson, what's your favorite holiday? And she's like, maybe you could be, Thanksgiving, Christmas. And he tells her his. I won't say which one it was. And he goes into a nice little overall storytelling of why he chose this particular holiday. And the way he ends that statement leaves her uneasy to the point where she has to check him in a certain way, whatever, and all that, and kind of gets her a little and riled up. And that's when it starts to open up other stuff. It's something else that happens in the trailer where, Peter, played by Tim Ross, asks, do you threaten your teacher's like, what do you mean, whatever. All these other different things starts to happen. You see the scene of her house being vandalized. There's a situation where she's about to teach her students, and there's a debate prep type of thing happening where they ask her to come in, and he's kind of using that situation to kind of bait her. Other little different things do happen. And I will say this, during some of the scenes with Luce, let me just piggy on the music aspect. I loved how they were intertwined the music within the scenes. I really enjoyed it. And I need to figure out where I can get my hands on the soundtrack, because if only I knew the name of a certain music that was played in two different instances, and then it was played at the end credits, which I like because it was very, I want to say, what's the word I want to use for this? It was very, it was used when it needed to be, and it was very subjective to helping the part of that particular scene along, the way the music kind of just tied in with it. I really like the way they did that, because it definitely had you engaged. I just will say that. So if any of you all see the movie, you will truly understand what I'm talking about. Then there's other scenes where you get an understanding from other students within the movie and their aspects of what role they play. Like there's a boy named Deshaun. He's been through a situation where he made a poor judgment. It's cost him his scholarship, whichever. You do see a scene where there's a girl who's considered maybe the girlfriend of sorts, whichever. Her name is Stephanie. She's played by Andrea Bang. She is really good. There's a particular scene that you see really quickly in the trailer of her talking to Naomi Watts' character, the mother, and she goes into a really, really dark part of a situation that's occurred with her. And I won't go into that because she did that part really good. Kudos to her. Also, there is one part I will say throughout within the movie with Octavia Spencer. You don't really get to see too much of her flush out, so to speak, because it's just basically about her. But you do see a scene where they do involve a family member, and the family member is, of course, coming to live with her. I will say there's one scene with her that is so literally just very provocative, and the woman who plays her name is Marsha Stephanie Blake. Great actress. She really digs deep, playing the part of a sister who, of course, is some sort of home that she's being taken care of. But of course, there's a scene where she's coming to move in to live with her so she can take better care of her. I think I want to say that's her sister. Her name is Rosemary. That's her character's name in the movie. But the scene of her showing up at the school, we'll just go that far. We won't go into more in detail, but it was definitely an eye-opening scene, and it opens up a little bit of a door, but not too much, because I feel like it wasn't fleshed out even more than it could have been, with understanding a little bit more of the character Harriet Wilson. So, but yes, you would almost think it was some sort of filler for her to give her another part of dynamic to her character in the movie, but I don't know how to take that. So like I said, when you all come back, you can let me know what you all thought of that as well. But in the end, overall, the character Naomi Watts, the mother, and then the father, Peter, played by Tim Roth, there's a scene between them where I like how we kind of get an understanding as to why they chose to go this route with being parents, as opposed to, as you could say, having their own kids. And I liked how he really goes there with her, understanding, what was the reason as why we did this, understanding, we could have went this way, but we chose this way, why is that, things of that nature, and they get into a heated discussion about that. I really enjoyed that because it kind of makes them have to face, the situations of, them bringing home Luce, him going through all the therapy he needed, her breaking down the understanding of the trust, the build up, that living in that, African country, dealing with the situation they were dealing with of that nature, and then where they are now, dealing with the situation now as him becoming almost a young adult, about to graduate eventually from high school, go to college, and now having to deal with the situation that they have been, dealt with, and coming to a realization, if, will things have been different, said that they had their kid, whatever, if we dealt with this, whichever, and she's just not here for it. He's saying these things, whichever. It was really, really deep. And then also, just another scene where you see in the trailer where it looks like there is like a parent teacher student conference with principal, and it kind of definitely gets heavy in there because certain other instances were to be kind of flushed out and drawn to the forefront, but certain things happen where it's kind of flipped, and you're kind of stuck wondering, okay, well, if this had been revealed, would this been a different outcome? And let's just say certain parties who are aware of certain situations didn't speak up, didn't do certain things. Maybe you could say didn't do the right thing, so to speak, and they know what is considered the right thing. I will say this, there are a lot of unanswered questions with certain things that were happening within the movie, but in the overall, you would probably put it I would say it like this. If you kind of understand what's happening in this, you're dealing with a situation where this lasers in on, I want to say, like, you're dealing with, of course, questions of prejudice, racism, individual, potential of a person, I felt like in the end, I really wish certain parts were flushed out a little bit more, because I feel like certain things were put out there and then they weren't, definitely dealt with a little bit more that I would have liked. But then it's like, the movies are almost 2 hours, so there's only so much they're going to give you to deal with, whichever. You kind of have to just kind of come up with the overall conclusion on your own, and that's fine, whichever. Most of this I could take it for that was not an issue for that. But I will say this, Calvin Harrison Jr. did his thing, and his character was very methodical when he felt that his privacy was invaded, whichever, and in the end decided he wanted to deal with this a certain way, whichever. He basically said and did what he needed to do to get the outcome of whatever he wanted in certain situations throughout the movie. Seeing his mother come to a realization of her child, definitely want to be the mother, definitely having his back, whatever, but realizing there was a lot of stuff going on with her child, her not knowing that her child was doing, and just trying to decide, from there, how do you want to handle this? Are you thinking you're doing the right, are you making the right decision, and for your child? I will say with Octavia Spencer's character being the teacher, she's very stern with her students, and when they do something they shouldn't do or wrong, whatever, and all that, they're to afford to pay the consequences of whichever. Clearly Deshaun did. Secondly, with Luce, her seeing that there could have been other things that were happening with him that maybe the family didn't know about. So seeing this type of paper, or essay written, and her reading this, wondering, is there something up under, layer up under that individuals are not aware of, because everybody's taking a shine to him, but she not so much. So I see it with her, and he made this kind of a little bit of a blank statement. I'm going to add on a little bit with this in regards to the scene of him talking to his mother, Amy, about his teacher, putting certain kids maybe on a certain pedestal. With her, she likes to factor in their backgrounds, their, a certain expectation of them. And I'm referring to Harry Wilson, the potential of what they can do for themselves. Definitely for Luce, whichever. That's why she felt the need to go to his mother and explain to her about this paper, this, please go talk to your son, whichever, giving her this opportunity to deal with this so they can just kind of knock this out, whatever, so we can move on, whatever, because we don't want this to come back. So when I say it like this, she holds the females, probably, children of color, kids of color, whatever, to a higher standard. So you would kind of see, like, as opposed to the white kids, white peers, whichever, because as they go out into the world beyond high school, that's just kind of how it will kind of be. It will probably be a difference of, dealing with, what's really going on out here in life, out here in the, as they say, the real world. It will be different, say, for if they want to say the white peers as opposed to the, people of color, whichever. And it's kind of like how she did that. That's why she treated Luce a certain way. Maybe Deshawn, definitely how she treated Stephanie as a character as well. The one that's considered, the girlfriend, whatever, and all that. She's, person of color. So that's how I kind of see the character of Octavia Spencer, Harriet Wilson's character in this movie. But in the end, like I said, the movie was really good. I really enjoyed it overall. My rating with this movie, I would give it about an 8.5. Like I said, mostly is because some things were not flushed out like I wanted them to. And I will say this, the ending the ending was not what I was expecting, so to speak, and it was not a bad ending, but just the way the two main characters, you want to sit there and want to believe, who is lying, who's telling truth, the people looking on the outside in, seeing what's going on, whichever, and all that, being that in those other individuals seeing what Luce is doing, or seeing what the teacher's trying to convey, and then trying to decide, who you want to believe, whichever, especially when certain things are really put out in front of you to really know what's really going on. Like I stated, it was really interesting because even though I feel like both of them in some ways lost, one person definitely felt like they won out, but then they really didn't, and I think deep down they know that just when you see the ending. Yeah, that was just really interesting how that last little bit of premises happened, whichever. But in the end, like I stated, I really enjoyed the film. I really hope you guys get to see it. I really did my darndest not to spoil it for you. I think I was very elusive with some of my statements here. So, but yes, that's basically all I have to say about that. Definitely check it out. Like I stated before, Calvin Harrison Johnson Jr., is definitely on my radar now. He did an excellent job in this movie. If anything, a lot of people might complain about the overall consistency of the overall movie, but I think I'm in agreement with a lot of people. Calvin did do the damn thing in this movie. So, but with that said, like I said, comment below, let me know what you all think. And with that said, I will see you guys in the next review. You guys take care.